What's up everybody, hope all is well. The tagline for my channel is I take gaming to heart and try to put that in my videos. Perhaps more so than any I've made thus far, this one matters to me. Warhammer 40K is a really special thing, and setting a game in that world motivates me to try and convey something grander. To know the 40K universe is to love it, and to play in it is to a degree even better. That is assuming the game lives up to the precedent the lore has set. So, does Warhammer 40K Darktide meet that bar? Does it complement the source material? Is it good enough to stand on its own even if you aren't into the fictional universe? Well, spoiler alert, this is my new favorite PvE game and I will be playing it long term. Fat Shark absolutely nailed the 40K ambiance and art style. Honestly, a dream come true for any fan, and the co-op gameplay itself is fun and intense and highly replayable. But it's not all roses. Just a few weeks from launch, there are some technical issues, and content, especially when compared to their previous game Vermintide 2, is light. But those issues aside, which I think will be resolved in short order, I feel confident saying Fat Sharks achieved the dream. This is the first Warhammer 40K game that makes you feel like you're in that world, and that's the selling point. Like Bioshock, Psychonauts, and even Elden Ring, your motivation to play stems as much from wanting to experience the universe as it does the gameplay. So, two parts to this video. First, we'll talk about the lore so you get a better idea of the world you're walking into, and then we'll talk about the game. Both sections are long, so if you're not interested in one or the other, just jump to the right chapter, but I do really encourage you to listen to the lore. It's important. Let's do it. I feel like I was doing you, the game, and the IP a major disservice if I didn't make a section explaining the backdrop of the lore you're playing against. Before we get into it though, I'd like to convey two important things. First, Warhammer 40K is scale and scope taken to the extreme. Everything is bigger, badder, and more complicated than any other fictional universe. In a routine day, entire planets are destroyed along with their billions of inhabitants. In any given battle, army sizes can reach into the millions, and as many lives are lost. And to maintain production on a galactic scale, entire worlds are turned into manufacturing facilities. The scope and scale is staggering, and the best part is, regardless of your interest, the universe likely has dozens, even hundreds of books or short stories that go into exquisite detail and really flesh that aspect out. And the second point I'd like to make, Warhammer 40K exists in a morally gray area where it's tough to tell just what's right or wrong. An individual life is meaningless and subject to sacrifice in the name of the Imperium. When you wrap your arms around the world, you discover an important fact. You can't really be sure who or what is good, and Games Workshop wants it that way. It makes for some great philosophical discussion. With that out of the way, let me paint a picture of Warhammer 40K. The Golden Age of humanity, also known as the Age of Technology, lasted roughly 10,000 years between the 15th and 24th millennia. It's seen as the pinnacle of mankind's scientific knowledge and mastery of technology, including artificial intelligence. The human race expanded across the heavens, building civilizations and crafting inconceivable machines of industry and war. It was a time of great prosperity where all societal obligations were met, labor tended by machines, and people were free to pursue more enriching activities. However, this galactic expansion in scientific advancement came with implications, most notably the discovery of alien species, the discovery of psychic powers, and the discovery of extra-dimensional space called the warp or the immaterium. All related and all responsible for mankind's eventual downfall and continued struggles 15,000 years later in the 41st millennia, present-day 40K. It's not known exactly when, but at some point during our expansion across the Milky Way galaxy, we encountered alien races. Some were benevolent, some were isolationist, and others were hostile. But the hostile race is so brutal and threatening, mankind would develop weapons and defenses that even 15,000 years later, in present-day 40K, are unassailable and in many cases, irreplaceable. During this time, we'd discover psychic abilities. It's believed all humans have a latent psychic connection, but during the Golden Age, people were being born with specific genetic alterations that made psychic abilities more accessible and powerful. But what was the energy behind these psychic phenomena? Enter mankind's discovery of the warp, extra-dimensional space that's pure psychic energy. It's theorized that this psychic energy is a direct result of our sentience, our pure emotion given physical form in this extra dimension. All of the love and hate in the universe from trillions of beings across countless sentient races is both pulled from and fed back into the warp. Its discovery was an opportunity. The warp transcends space and time, so it's perfect for warp travel, something increasingly vital to mankind's sprawling galactic-wide empire, but perhaps more critically, it's a source of infinite energy that can be extracted and utilized for mankind's titanic weaponry. It's theorized that early on the warp was a neutral place, or maybe even good. Psychic energy flowing in and out was even imbalanced, but when all these sentient races discovered one another and went to war, as we did, it was filled with hate and anger and despair, fueling its evil nature and starving its benevolence. As a result, now the warp's a place of horrors so terrible the mere sight of which will drive a person insane. It's ruled by 4 gods, 4 chaos gods to be specific. They seek to sow chaos in our plane of existence so that the warp and them may feed off the negative psychic energy. As they've grown in power, they found ways to intrude on this material plane either as physical beings or simply corrupting human souls. Our fall from grace appears to be pretty straightforward. Our creation of and reliance on advanced artificial intelligence and machines would be our downfall. It's not known why, but around the 23rd millennium we went to war with our robots, men of iron as they were called. This would become known as the cybernetic revolt. Both sides unleashed devastation on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Weaponry so advanced as to be godlike, machines built to consume stars and destroy entire solar systems. And while the human race was eventually victorious, the damage done was so catastrophic that our grip on reality didn't just slip, but was lost entirely. Imagine the countless human worlds across the galaxy, once part of a thriving, interconnected economy and society, now all cut off and isolated, many without the knowledge, resources, or manpower to survive alone. Even few were able to withstand the relentless assaults of the Xenos. This time would be known as the Age of Strife, and the human race teetered on the brink of extinction. Enter the Emperor of Mankind. He was born sometime during the Age of Strife and has lived for thousands of years. His origins wrapped in mystery and his intentions even more so. Some believe he's a genetic experiment, a shining example of what our genetic code is capable of when pushed to the extremes. Some believe he's a collection of ancient souls, reborn as one, while others still believe he's a divine entity, a true living god, perhaps even born from the warp, whose purity and divinity set him in direct opposition to the chaos gods who exist there. But regardless, in the 41st millennia, he's the Emperor of Mankind, a being whose potential is immeasurable and for all intents and purposes is perfect. The only one capable of pulling humans out of the Age of Strife and back into greatness. As the central figure in this universe, his story is complex, touching virtually every other storyline and playing out over thousands of years. But today, he sits atop the Golden Throne, a husk of a man, and has done so for centuries. After being gravely wounded in battle, the Golden Throne was the only device that could keep him alive, and more importantly, keep his soul and psychic presence alive. To do so, every day, 1,000 psychic humans shipped in from all corners of the galaxy are sacrificed in his name. Their souls and psychic energy fed into the machine so that the God Emperor may live on in spirit. Present day, mankind is ruled by the Imperium of Man. Politics, the military, science, and even religion are all managed with a cult-like zealotry. Every aspect of society is geared towards one thing: worshipping the God Emperor and falling in line with the Imperium. To speak out against the throne or Imperium or fail to do your assigned duties typically results in a death sentence or worse. It's a strict, brutal existence for the untold billions who are nothing more than a number and whose worth is wholly insignificant. So here we are in the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war. As mankind struggles to regain their status as the galactic superpower, countless plots are afoot. Constant and relentless wars with the Xenos, constant and relentless wars with the Chaos Gods and their minions and machinations, and a constant and relentless struggle amongst themselves to hold the human race together. The savior of mankind, the Emperor, has sat atop the Golden Throne for 1,000 years, but there are signs he might be starting to wake up. Will he be reborn into another body? Will he transcend and become a true god? Or will he pass entirely as the human race slips back into chaos? Only time will tell. Okay, let's get into the actual game now. Here's a 30-second summary. Who's this for? Why play? Well, it's a really good example of a first-person co-op PvE shooter. It takes that magical Left 4 Dead gameplay formula and tacks on some RPG elements. It's highly replayable and offers up a lot of playstyles. The world design is atmospheric and massive and authentic to the lore, not to mention beautiful, especially with the ray tracing. The combat itself isn't anything revolutionary, but it's solid and most importantly fun, and if their previous game Vermintide 2 is anything to go by, we can expect frequent, sizable content updates. So bottom line, it's pretty fun. It has a good foundation to build off of and is a genuine Warhammer 40K experience. I feel like it's a safe recommendation for the average Joe and a must play for anyone into the 40K universe. You play as a convict in a hive city on the planet of Tertium. What's a hive city, you ask? Imagine everyone and everything on Earth condensed down into one city. Hives contain billions of people, and most have existed since the Golden Age when mankind spread across the galaxy. They do so in great starships, and upon reaching their destination, disassemble the ship for raw materials and resources used to start their colony. Over thousands of years, they're built up higher and wider, eventually reaching above the clouds and viewable from space. As expected, the wealthier citizens live near the top, with the dredges of society and manufacturing taking up the lower levels. The lowest levels of these ancient cities are typically harsh, violent places ruled by gangs and sometimes infested with the dark powers of chaos. This is where we find ourselves in Darktide. Enter Inquisitor Grendel. In the Imperium of Man, a special sect of the government exists whose sole purpose is the investigation and prosecution of anything deemed heretical or a threat to the Imperium. These individuals are known as Inquisitors. They have complete authority, answering only to the Emperor himself. As an example of their power, they alone can order the extermination of entire worlds. In Darktide, Inquisitor Grendel's been called in to remove the chaos threat from Tertium. We are one of the tools at his disposal. As lowly convicts, we're thrown into the meat grinder. Each victory over the Chaos Horde earns us trust and respect from the Imperium and Inquisitor Grendel and brings us one step closer to our freedom. You start by selecting a character. I chose a Psyker who draws on warp energy to do most of their damage. As a result, you won't see a lot of me using an actual gun in this video, my apologies, but if that's more your style, you can play a Sharpshooter who does specialize in guns. These guys are trained veteran soldiers of the Imperial Guard, run afoul of the law. There's also the Zealot, a holy warrior, a fanatic of the Emperor who charges headfirst into battle with a divine rage. Or maybe you like being the big guy, the meat shield. In that case, you can play the Ogrin, a giant who wields giant weapons. They can even carry a shield and tank for the team. Once you pick a character, you specify physical appearance, background, personality, and even voice profile. With character creation out of the way, you play a quick tutorial before being introduced to the game in full. You'll find yourself at the hub. Like every hub in every game you've ever played, this is where you buy and upgrade gear, meet others, and enlist for missions. At first, it doesn't look like there's much going on here, but as you level up, additional vendors and NPCs unlock for you to interact with. Like this guy here who unlocks at level 11, I believe, and offers weekly missions and more high-end weapons and gear. Now it's time to get down to business and run a mission. These are the game. The point of it all is to run missions repeatedly, obtain currency and experience and gear you then use to level up your player power. In addition, each attempt earns you trust with the Inquisitor, which ultimately results in more of the game being unlocked. More missions, better vendors, better gear, and so on. As you build your power, you can do more difficult and rewarding missions, rinse, and repeat. Let's take a moment and look at the mission select screen. You can see varying missions. In this case, because it's the beta, only a few were available, but they're of varying difficulty levels and have various rewards and modifiers. Missions update periodically. I believe each variation is available for just 20-ish minutes and then changes to something else. Upon completion, win or lose, you get a reward, go back to the hub where you can buy or build upgraded gear, update your skills, and head back out. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now, if there's one area I did want to talk more about, it's the quantity of items and skills. At first, it seems pretty limited. You get, 3 or 4 melee weapons, 3 or 4 guns, and so on. But as I said, as you level up, better vendors and gear are made available, and this is where a lot of the magic sauce is, because higher tier weapons have special and unique affixes that change up the playstyle and let you create builds. Also worth mentioning, you get 1 new skill every 5 levels. Not a lot of depth there, but at least you can freely swap them to complement whatever weapons you might be using. All that being said, like I mentioned earlier, Fat Shark updated Vermintide 2 in a really robust game, and I expect the same here over time, so while it's a bit light right now, I do think it'll improve in short order. Now let's talk combat. It feels pretty good. Like I said, nothing revolutionary, but on a fundamental level, the core design and strategy and execution is there. Mechanically, it's just okay. It can be a bit clunky. Definitely not Destiny smooth here. I'd compare it to something like Borderlands instead. It feels okay when you're playing it, but doesn't compare to something super refined like Doom or even say Overwatch. I'd even give Back 4 Blood a sizable mechanical advantage here, but look, I'm being critical. That subjective criticism aside, the gameplay experience as a whole congeals into a pretty fun and great experience, in large part because of the world you're playing in large part because of the team component, but that's not to say the combat itself is lacking, quite the opposite. I think Fat Shark hit the sweet spot. The pacing of enemy waves isn't suffocating, elite units are dangerous and need to be priority targets, the AI is pretty smart and knows to flank or sneak up or go after the straggler, and there's a good variety of enemy types requiring balanced tactics. And the boss fights, it can get pretty intense. It's billed as hybrid combat, meaning a balance of melee and ranged weapons with an emphasis on switching, and that is in fact what it is. Personally, being totally honest, that was my rub with Vermintide. I really wanted it to be more of a shooter than hack and slash, but I think Darktide successfully evolved the hybrid combat concept here and made it more fun with a push towards emphasizing ranged combat. You still need to melee a lot, but whether you're using guns or grenades or warp energy, ranged combat shifts the paradigm. It opens up a lot more strategy for both players and developers, and it boosts the power trip for players. Heck, even the eye candy ranged combat provides adds a lot to the experience. At first, it won't seem this way. At low levels, people don't have good weapons yet and ammo is scarce, but once you start leveling up, ranged combat really starts to shine, and for me personally, really changed how much fun I was having. So, final thoughts. I wasn't sure how to end this. In general, I have good things to say, but I do have a beef or two. Though, in all fairness, I haven't reached max level, so I don't really know what the game still holds. But then it dawned on me. I want to wrap this up so that I, after 9 days of already playing, can log in and enjoy more Darktide. So I think regardless of what else I said in this video, that's endorsement enough. As a 40K nerd, I'm happy. In that respect, it's great. It feels like a real 40K experience. But as a gamer, it's more complicated. While I think it's a good game, it's not for everyone. And while I think it's a fun game with a lot of replayability, I'm not sure it'll be something I play really long term. But the world they've crafted is so fantastic, I will return to play new content. That's just me. I'd encourage you to check it out. It might be your thing, and nowadays between Game Pass and Steam returns, you can safely experience most games to get a feel before committing. But be warned, once you get to a boss fight and hear that music, you will be swiping that card.
Reckon you can match me?